Welcome to the Seriously podcast. I'm your host, Annaliese Gann. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the Seriously podcast, where we make light of serious conversations with really interesting people. Joshua Morley is the global head of AI, data and analytics, as well as the national DEI lead at Akkodis, Australia. Artificial intelligence, or AI, is the intelligence of machines or software as opposed to the intelligence of humans or animals. And we are seeing more and more of this being utilised in our day-to-day lives. So I got Josh in because I wanted to ask, what is the hype about AI and what is its future in Australia? This chat is really interesting. It dives into many topics, including artificial intelligence, data, and neurodiversity. I hope you love it because it was a great one. Here it is. Welcome back to the Seriously podcast. This week on the show, we have Josh Morley.
Thank you very much for having me.
How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Tired, but well.
In a few sentences, Josh, can you tell me about your current role and company?
Absolutely. So I work for a company called Akkodis. We're a global technology and engineering consulting firm. We have 55,000 people around the world, and I look after AI for Australia across our 4 businesses, and I'm also the global head of data, AI and analytics across all our business units.
That's a big title for someone who's just 30.
It is. It's a great opportunity.
Very impressive. How did you get into it? Have you got a degree?
I do. I did software engineering at university, and I did a thesis in big data and particularly architecture for artificial intelligence. So it's been a long time coming. That's been about 8 years since my first major project and paper in AI.
So pretty much he's saying he's the smartest person in the room. No pressure, Annaliese. In your own words, what is artificial intelligence? Like at a very basic level.
I think any kind of process that simulates an intelligent entity, decision-making body, anything like that, I think it is so broad, and it's deliberately broad so that the sub-families within it can be defined a lot more concretely. Mm-hmm. So anything that's simulating artificial knowledge or decision-making.
Okay. Well, a lot of people talk to me, and I work in marketing and social media, and a lot of people in my industry are especially worried that AI will take our jobs. So do you think, in your perspective, AI will take white-collar jobs, or what is your perspective on that situation?
It is a genuine concern, and I completely agree that it's valid to have the concern. I like to take the approach that we can use AI to uplift productivity and increase the performance of the capable people that we have working in these jobs. There will be leadership teams who decide that they would take additional profit through layoffs and things like that. And so ultimately it'll come down probably to the circumstance in the company and the leadership team. But I think equipping yourself as a professional, especially in white-collar jobs, to know how to utilize it to boost your performance will make you very safe in your role. My
question is, like, obviously white-collar jobs, they're more at stake when it comes to AI-centered jobs. However, what about blue-collar jobs or service workers? Like, can AI ever replace that in terms of, like, physical work and physical labour?
It's a really interesting point. And some of the earlier industrial revolutions that we had around the conveyor belt and everything that came after the advent of the steam engine, they targeted those blue-collar jobs. And now it's the white-collar because it's the digital age, and those are the jobs that are at most at risk. But in the same way that learning how to be a part of a mechanicalized system as a blue-collar worker during the first industrial revolution, learning how to utilize AI in your role now makes you invaluable. So I think, that's why it's more on the AI, more on the white-collar side, because we're in the information age. There's a lot more productivity to be gained from that area, whereas we've already had the revolution for the blue-collar. And to answer your point on whether blue-collar will be disrupted again, I think that'll come in time. It will come. Deploying AI, it's called at the edge, so onto machinery, equipment, down on site, and the productivity gains that you get as a result of robotics coupled with AI, for example.
Okay, interesting. Thanks for answering that question. I know it's probably something that people don't really ask you in your role. I want to ask, in terms of AI-centric jobs, for example, what jobs would be the most at stake in terms of people being overtaken by AI? Like, I'm in marketing. I know copywriters are very scared at the moment because of ChatGPT, things like that. Can you talk to me a bit about that?
Yeah, and I can't give you anything concrete according to the market or anything like that. I don't understand the capacity of all the different domains and jobs, but I can talk to the benefits of leveraging AI and the risks associated with that. So copywriting, a perfect example, generative AI and large language models like we see with ChatGPT, they are now able to write all this content far faster. But I would say that the context and the quality of the output isn't matched for an expert copywriter. If you had an expert copywriter who was able to input their domain expertise, their context, their understanding of their client, then you will get the same superior quality in a fraction of the time. So it's that coupling of the professional with their expertise with the generative tool that now you get the best of both worlds. Whereas if you try to eliminate the person, yes, you can generate something in seconds rather than days or weeks, but you're not going to get the same quality of output. And that stands the same with generative images, with code, everything that we talk about and everything that I talk about in my role is always a professional supported and leveraging AI rather than being replaced by.
Interesting. And that's what I think people need to hear, because a lot of people are really scared at the moment. But from your opinion, they shouldn't be.
It does depend on the leadership. Yeah, it's just as
okay. Where is the most advanced AI in the world?
I think, and I have no way of measuring this or knowing for sure. From what I've heard, that from purely cultural perspective, China absolutely adopted it. Like, I think they have that high performing, high commitment culture in the workplace. That means that they just threw everything into it and said, everybody has to learn this, everybody has to start using this. And they're seeing results of that now. There was a survey that got put out. Australia did not too bad, but it wasn't top 20, I think. In fact, a lot of Australian CEOs, I think, are 15% lower than the world average in terms of their perspective of the value that AI could bring into the business, which is concerning because it is an enormous amount of value.
Mm-hmm. AI created art and media are currently not protected under any copyright laws. What is your understanding of this, and do businesses have to be careful of this in the future?
Yeah, it is something definitely to take into consideration. From what I understand, it changes region by region, but the general approach that I've heard governments are taking is if you just put in a basic prompt and it generates an image or a video now or whatever it is, that's not protected. But if you generate something, you then edit it or you go through a refinement process. So if you put more into it than just a single sentence text prompt, then it can become protected. So it can become an asset. So I think it's about the effort input and the energy. And I think that's fair enough because there are so many different combinations and things that people could arbitrarily begin copywriting, tens of thousands, millions, billions of pieces of art, all that kind of stuff in the hope, as a patent troll kind of thing, in the hope that somebody will infringe on it by pure chance because they happen to generate something that's very similar. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you do put in that process of, there were multiple stages of refinement, we did editing, we did color correction, then it becomes protected. And I think it's a fairly good preliminary approach to take.
Mm-hmm. So with the copyright laws, in your opinion, do you think they need a whole overview to bring AI up to the standard of other technologies?
Yeah, I think with a lot, this is going to be fundamentally disruptive in nearly every area. Like education is a massive example that they're going to have to do complete overhauls of our entire education process. And it's in the same way that when the calculators were introduced, they were criticized because they're cheating, is what they was said, because, but they can just do it, easily, digitally. But what happened is we moved on to more advanced forms of mathematics at a younger age. And AI will be the same. We don't need to write long-form essays or other components because it's not as relevant anymore. It's forcing us to re-baseline where we are as a humanity. We're going to move on to more advanced things as a result of the technology.
Hey guys, if you've loved listening to the Seriously podcast, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify podcasts. It keeps us making incredible content for all of you to hear. Thanks so much. That leads into my next question. At the moment, do you think AI inhibits the learnings of students in high schools and universities?
Definitely.
In Australia?
Yeah. Because at the moment the education system hasn't caught up, there's either no policy, so students are generating essays, submitting them, they're not learning anything, or there's a total ban, in which case it's a kind of, can I get away with it? Or and at this point, the studies show there is no reliable way of detecting generated content, despite what schools say. The studies from MIT, from Stanford show that the confidence sits usually between 40 and maybe 70%, that the confidence in that this was generated by AI. So I read that stat and say, okay, so from 30 to 60% of people, you're going to be wrong. And if you're looking at academic misconduct, termination from the university or the school, permanent black mark on their record, is it okay to effectively, mess up 30 to 60% of students' lives? Is that a sufficient confidence? Because it's not at all. So we have no reliable way of detecting whether it's generated. So all we have to do is adjust the curriculum, adjust the assessment styles, and I think understand that it's going to be embraced. It should be taught and adopted. That's the new reality. So how can we change the way that people are assessed? And I've got messages from people at uni. Some of the unis are starting to adapt, and an assessment was set for a paralegal course. So nothing technical. And it was used generative AI to write an article about this particular process within not a paralegal, paramedic. Use this particular process to generative AI to define this particular process in the course that a paramedic completes on a day-to-day shift. But it has to cite 10 references. The references have to exist. And then the next phase of the assignment was you swap with another student and you criticize the output. So this is a way of understanding that, yeah, we can get something to write it, but then we're critically analyzing it. So they're learning through that process. And the citation adds an extra step because you have to verify that the citation exists, because AI it's called hallucinate, where it makes things up. And through that process of verification, you're also learning a bit because you have to read the text, check to see if what was referenced does actually exist. So it's a way of adapting, but still embracing the technology.
Mm-hmm. And in saying that, what are your thoughts at your level of where you work, like very high level? What are your thoughts on programs like ChatGPT and other things like that with AI?
I love it.
Do you use it yourself?
I use it multiple times a day.
Okay.
Our Australian CEO uses it multiple times per day. Because my background is in data and tech, I run my own instance that I have trained. It's called fine-tuned to how I think, how I respond. And it just means that the output is closer to how I would reply.
Okay.
But I only ever use it for kind of the first 80%, or maybe like a final review or something. But and we call it human in the loop, and it's when you don't generate something and then just send it off without checking it. There's some kind of human stage gate where you refine it, you review it, you check it's accurate. Because without that process, there was a famous scenario in the US where a lawyer generated some of his case files, and it referenced a precedent, a previous court case that didn't exist, and he didn't check it. He just submitted it. So there always has to be that manual check process. Well, not always, but it's certainly for the moment. So yeah, I use it all the time. I use it from everything for just generating stuff. I like to use it to criticize my work. So I will put something that I wrote or that it wrote and I refined and say, I want you to act as a CEO or as an investor, as a lawyer, whatever it is, and I want you to criticize my work and then propose solutions to any criticisms that you have. And then I'll read through that result and incorporate anything that I think brings value.
Can I ask, what other AI tools do you use on a regular day-to-day basis, especially someone at your level? Because I'm guessing you have heaps of things that you use. And do you ever get over it? Do you ever think, like, I just need a tech-free day?
Oh, absolutely. All of my hobbies are unrelated to tech.
Oh, okay.
So past hobbies have been everything from blacksmithing, woodworking, leatherworking, home skincare. I like to anything that's not technical to make sure that I don't narrow my brain, so much. But yeah, so other tools, I run open source models locally on my machine. It just means that I can trust that the data is kept secure, private, and open source is fantastic because you have entire communities of hundreds of thousands of developers all contributing towards and sharing the results of their work, whereas the proprietary models from the big tech companies are fantastic and they're sinking enormous amounts of money in, but they don't have that raw scale. And Google famously had an internal memo, I think it was, leak that said, it's called We Have No Moat. And they effectively said, we can't beat open source, but that's okay because Microsoft can't either. They're acknowledging that open source will be the most superior. And then you look at organizations like Microsoft under the leadership of somebody like Satya Nadella, and they're massive advocates of open source. They've kind of incorporated the open source into their service offerings because they know that's where you're going to get the most, or at least partially the most superior product. It's really well done. But yeah, on the tools, something that we've been trialing is a tool called Synthesia, and it generates video content based off an avatar. It's like a newsreader style video generation. So I write a lot of training courses, both for our internal use as well as we're writing some with a large technology company. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, so I'm not going to say their name. But the idea is by me writing the content and generating a lot of the content, to be fair, because I know to input the right information, I can then feed that script into this kind of generative thing and people can watch it back as a video or listen to it as a podcast kind of thing, when in reality I just inputted the information and everything else from there has been generated.
Wild.
Yeah.
There's so many cool things that are coming out, and that kind of leads into my next question. What is the future of AI? Like, where do you see it, for example, in Australia in the next 5 years?
I don't want to give too much away because this is a commercial advantage, but I will be
No, kidding.
in a few weeks. I will be in London, Stuttgart, and then Oslo, talking about some stuff that we're working on internally that is directly aligned with my strategy for AI over the next few years. But I think AI agents, it's a term that's been around for a long time, whether they're intelligent agents, knowledge-based agents, and it's the idea that you create this AI entity that kind of perpetually runs through maybe something, it's called reinforcement learning, and it's just incentivizing, it's saying this is behavior that's good, this is behavior that's bad, and you let that run over and over again, and you continually refine what it knows to be good behavior. And through doing that thousands of times to millions of times, whatever it is, you create this AI thing that doesn't understand, but it can act in a way that you have shaped it to act. And I love the idea of having these agents act as part of a human team, as the minute taker in meetings, as the draft up this to-do list based off the result of a discussion that we had, or all that kind of stuff. And Microsoft's Copilot is going to do a lot of it. So we're trying to balance where do we invest now to get ahead of the curve, versus if we invest in something now and they release Microsoft release a commercial model, in 3 months, it's going to render us redundant. So we have to be very particular about the stuff that we're developing, because all the big tech companies are putting so much into this, as are the consultancies. Like, you see announcements from PwC, for example, who pledged $3 billion into AI. And yeah, it's an enormous amount of investment. So being very strategic about it is. But for the next 5 years, I see AI agents as the next frontier. People are becoming very used to AI chatbots now. And chatbots have been horrible for years. Nobody liked interfacing with chatbots.
That's very true.
But now with the foundation models, the large language models, they're a lot more interactable. Mm-hmm. And interactive AI is a term that I push for, and I know significant representatives of the AI world push for. Either the chair or the CEO of NVIDIA talks about interactive AI rather than generative AI, because if you look at ChatGPT, it's the perfect example. A lot of people are familiar with it. Really only 50% of the interaction that you have is generative, and that's where it writes something back to you. The other component is natural language processing and utilizing these large language models, whereas interactive AI well encapsulates that experience, and that's what I see as the next significant frontier.
So in terms of AI, like for me, because I think everyone thinks, right, we're at the point in technology where it can't get any bigger or better. Will there ever be a line in the sand as to where we stop with technology, or do you think it will always just be ever evolving and developing?
That's what I think is quite cool about technology as a field, is that as we discover something that fundamentally reshapes our understanding of what's possible, it opens up a whole new world of possibility that people didn't even think about. And AI is kind of helping us do that as well. Things like the genome sequencing or drug discovery, for example, it can run all these simulations now and look for new viable drug alternatives that might not have severe side effects or things like that. And it can do it in a safe theoretical environment. It might spit out a bunch of stuff that we then put into that trial phase. But it means that we're not shooting in the dark. We go into the trial phase with something that has been developed and analyzed by the AI models. But I think for me, something that I like to emphasize, emotional intelligence will become the single most important factor of anybody working in a white-collar job, because the studies are showing that everybody's productivity gets uplifted with AI, and it's they've got hard numbers on that now. But the really interesting thing is the people who were typically not considered high performers have a larger uplift in their productivity as a result of using AI tools than the people who are the high performers. So they're starting to meet each other. And if your high performers are no longer significantly higher performing than other employees, toxic behaviors as a result of low EQ won't be tolerated anymore, because they're only marginally outputting higher. So that means it's going to be increasingly important to understand communication, conflict resolution, all these really valuable skill sets that I think aren't valued as much or haven't been historically, versus technical hard skills.
Well, for those listening at home, Josh told me prior that he has been diagnosed with ASD, also known as Asperger's.
Oh, autism spectrum disorder, yeah.
Yes.
Asperger's was the old
name.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that has actually helped you succeed in your career? But we're very neurodiverse positive on this podcast. We really we interview people from all walks of life, and I believe some of the most amazing like physicians and artists and musicians and scientists of all time are on the spectrum. For yourself, do you think that's advanced your career quite quickly? Because you're only 30. You're very successful.
It's an interesting thing to think about, and I don't have the background in psychology to understand, but I often think humans love putting labels on things that they don't understand. So, if you look back at a few thousand years ago, there was a big flash and a loud noise, so that must be a god called Zeus, battling the giants or something. And I wonder if things like ASD are labels put on things that we don't understand yet, because we're not comfortable with not labeling things. Because as you said, there are a lot of exceptionally high-performing people who are probably labelled with it because that's the closest thing we have to understanding how their mind works. And it can be very different to fit the shape into the whole unless we assign it its own unique label. But there are fantastic things like if you've met an autistic person, you've met one autistic person, and people, it's easy to collect and group people like the women in tech or the autistic community or whatever it is. And while they share the common struggles, in my case, it was the structured nature of a standard schooling schedule or the schooling system didn't do me well because of the standardized approach to testing. But on the other hand, if I've had fantastic leaders who have supported me by giving me space to work in a way that my brain can work in. And that means that I far outperform colleagues who are neurotypical, to give them a label. So it's very much a product of your environment. And I do, not to get too off track, but I talk about that. There were two students at university. One got kicked out. They had a 13% average, and they also had significant other mental health challenges. The other student graduated with a 89 average, first class honours, and had their pick of jobs, really. And they're both me. The only thing that changed was the environment that I was in and the way that I could work. So especially with people who don't fit into your demographic or your cultural environment, it's important to support them because you're effectively choosing which one do you want. Do you want to support them, let them work in a way that benefits them? You get the second person. If you try to micromanage them or force them to conform into something that they're not built for, you're going to get the first person, and they're the same.
It's so interesting because I have seen therapists for years and they're like, Annaliese, you definitely are neurodiverse in some way. But for me, like a hybrid work environment works well because of the masking, because then I don't have to perform all day.
So energy consuming.
It is so energy consuming. So I completely understand what you were saying before. Josh, I want to ask you one last question. For those who want to get into the AI industry, for people who want to even maybe get to your level one day, where would you start?
There's some really cool courses that have come out from Google and Microsoft now, I believe. And they're free, they're available to anybody, and they go through everything from the basics of what is generative AI as a concept, right through to how can you code with generative AI and use it and this kind of stuff. And because they're publicly available, they're free, it's a very low barrier for entry for people that have that interest and passion. From there, there's, you can go down the traditional path of getting a degree at uni, stuff like that. I think one of the merits of tech is it's not so focused on what is your degree or what is your background. If you have the knowledge and you can demonstrate through projects, there's a thing called GitHub where you can upload your projects and people can see them and they can trial them, download them. And that's usually the first thing that I look at when I get a CV. If they have their GitHub on there, I'm going to look at what projects they've done. Are they any good? I can look at the code. And you could absolutely get a job just by having high quality projects that you've been working on in your spare time. So
Okay.
you don't even have to, quit your current role. There's something you can do evenings and weekends to build up your skills, build up a portfolio, and then use the portfolio to transition in your role into a tech role. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. And the thing that I love about interactive AI, ChatGPT, things like that, is you can ask it to help you. It's not like when the internet came out or personal computers and people that didn't know how to use them had to sit their grandson or granddaughter next to them and get walked through it. I advocate for asking the ChatGPT or the AI to help you. Say, hey, I want you to write me a script or write this copy, but I don't know how to use you. Can you tell me what I need to tell you so that you can do that? Or what questions do you want me to answer so that you have enough information to do it? And it inverts that kind of process control so that you don't have to know. You can also ask it, hey, how was my prompting? What can I do better in the future? And it can help you develop over time. And I don't think there's been any technology that you could do that in the past, where you kind of have that personal coach providing feedback to any question that you have.
Josh, you've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much for coming on Seriously. Where can people find you on Instagram?
Instagram, my name is Joshua J. Morley. No underscores or dots. The LinkedIn is the same. I'm much more active on LinkedIn, but happy for people to add me on Instagram too.
I think the ladies are going to come chasing after you after this interview, so just beware. You might get a few DMs.
No worries.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, guys, for listening to Seriously this week. It's been an amazing interview, and we'll catch you next week for another guest. Bye.